Yo, what's up guys? Alpha, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 3 with on the Arena ladder. As you can see from the Arena Pro Tracker screenshot here, I'm currently 21-3 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, we'll have the full deck list there that you can import into Arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my Rakdos Crucias Midrange deck in Historic. Now obviously Rakdos Midrange has been a deck in Historic for quite a while now, but I think the deck has definitely improved quite a lot with the addition of Crucias Titan of the Waves from the latest Alchemy set, both because it's an additional way for us to fix our hand, which is exactly what you want in Rakdos Midrange, but also because you get to turn this into a tutor effect to be able to find silver bullets from the sideboard, which is something that Rakdos Midrange has never had access to before. So if you're not familiar with the deck, Rakdos Midrange is essentially a low synergy midrange deck that's looking to run the most efficient removal in the format. You know, we've got cheap discard spells and very efficient creature removal, and then, you know, we use that to disrupt the opponent in the early game, slow their game plan down, and then we have generically powerful cards like Fable, Seasoned Pyromancer, and Crucias to really press the advantage that we get, you know, to start snowballing the game once we do slow the opponent down with our early interaction. So we'll start by having a look at the threats, starting off with Crucias, you know, the new card in the deck. So if you're not familiar with this card, 3-mana 3/3, and at the beginning of your end step you may discard a card. If you do, create a treasure token and choose Ambitious or Expedient. If you choose Ambitious, you seek a card with greater mana value than the discarded card. If you choose Expedient, you seek a card with lesser mana value than the discarded card. So at a base rate, this is just really useful in this deck because one of the big weaknesses of Rakdos Midrange, and I guess low synergy midrange decks in general, is that you have to rely on your interaction lining up well. So obviously, you know, you're going to have some matchups where you have Fatal Push and Molten Impact and you're against a control opponent who has no creatures. In those situations, we can use Crucias to discard the creature interaction and find something better. You know, similarly, sometimes you're going to draw discard spells when the opponent's empty-handed. Again, we can use Crucias to pitch those to find something better as well. One of the other changes I've made to the deck with the addition of Crucias is I've gone up to 25 lands, just because with, you know, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Seasoned Pyromancer, and Crucias are all so important to cast on turn 3. You really need to be hitting your third land drop on curve. So I've gone up on lands slightly, which does mean you're going to flood out slightly more. But again, we can pitch our lands to Crucias to find something better as well. So Rakdos Midrange is always going to be looking for good quality cards to fix your hand, and Crucias is perfect at doing that. Not only that, but it also creates treasure tokens, which allows us to ramp. It allows us to cast multiple spells in a turn easier. We have a ton of mana sinks in the deck through our creature lands, Castle Lochthwain, you know, Seasoned Pyromancer from the graveyard, Escaping Croxer from the graveyard as well, so always going to have good use for the treasures. Additionally, it allows us to trigger Revolt on Fatal Push at instant speed as well, which is really important. So at a base rate, a really powerful card. But the other really nice thing about Crucias is that we can also use it as a tutor effect, because if you look at the way the deck's set up, the only card in the main deck that costs more than 3 is Shieldred. So if we have Crucias and we pitch one of our 3 drops, like another Crucias, Seasoned Pyromancer, or Fable, and we name Ambitious, we're guaranteed to tutor Shieldred, which is super powerful against specific matchups, you know, against aggro, against Phoenix, against any deck that's trying to draw a lot of cards. Tutoring the Shieldred is super sick. And then post sideboard, we can board out the Shieldred and board into our one-ofs in the sideboard that are for specific matchups. And that allows us to tutor up the silver bullets from the sideboard, which, like I said, is something that Rakdos Midrange has never had access to before. I'm going to explain what these are for when I get to the sideboard, but in general, I think Crucias is a really, really sick addition to the deck. Then we've also got Fable of the Mirror Breaker, so all 3 chapters on this are really sick. Chapter 1 creates a 2/2, which gives you board presence. When it attacks, it creates a treasure token, so you're instantly getting a mana advantage if the opponent doesn't kill the 2/2 straight away. You know, like I said with Crucias, we have a ton of mana sinks in the deck, so we're always going to have use for the treasures. Again, it's another way for us to trigger Revolt on Fatal Push. And then Chapter 2, you may discard up to 2 cards if you do draw that many cards. So again, like I said with Crucias, we really want as many ways to fix our hand as possible. You know, the weakness of running a lot of discard spells, like I said, is that sometimes the opponent's going to be empty-handed and then it's a really bad top deck. So being able to loot stuff like that away is really, really important. Helps you dig towards what you need. So really, really useful Chapter 2. And then Chapter 3 transforms into a reflection of Kiki Jiki, which is essentially just a really powerful late-game engine if the opponent doesn't kill it. The main 2 cards that we're looking to copy with Reflection if we get to untap with it is Bloodtithe Harvester. We can copy Bloodtithe Harvester and essentially get a free removal spell every single turn, which is sick. And also Seasoned Pyromancer. If we copy Seasoned Pyromancer, we basically just get to draw an additional 2 cards every single turn, which is super powerful and basically just buries the opponent in card advantage. So Fable of the Mirror Breaker basically does everything that we want, you know, fixes our hand, gets us some board presence, and turns into a strong late game engine as well. Then speaking of Seasoned Pyromancer, 3-mana 2/2, and then it basically just, you know, fixes our hand. But the really powerful thing about Seasoned Pyromancer, if you've not played with it before, is if you're completely empty-handed, you don't have to discard to get the draw. You can just play this as a 3-mana draw 2 if you are hellbent. So Seasoned Pyromancer best card to top deck if you are hellbent and it's gone to a very grindy game, because a lot of the time the way this deck plays out is you're trying to strip the opponent of resources, so it often ends up in these states where both you and your opponent are low on resources, and having cards like Seasoned Pyromancer just completely allows you to pull ahead in those situations. Even if you're not empty-handed, the fact that this creates tokens is really, really sick against aggro. This is probably your best card at stabilizing against aggro, because you can play this on turn 3, pitch 2 non-lands and put 3 bodies onto the battlefield to block, because since you are kind of reliant on your single target removal, especially in the main deck, that does make you kind of more vulnerable to the go wide aggro decks, because if the opponent can commit a ton of different creatures to the battlefield, if they can play like 3 or 4 creatures within the first few turns of the game, it can be difficult to deal with them all with your single target removal. And so having Seasoned Pyromancer as a way to just put a ton of bodies onto the battlefield to chump block, stabilize and buy you some time is really sick. And then additionally, you can then activate it from the graveyard to produce even more tokens. So not only is this a great way to refuel, but it's also a really good way to stabilize against the aggro decks. And we've also got Bloodtithe Harvester, so this is just a decently sized body to get down on turn 2 that can also work as extra interaction, which is really nice. We can use this to pick off the opponent's early creatures if we need, and like I said, it works really nicely with Reflection, so just a very flexible card that we can use to apply pressure. I think Bloodtithe Harvester is particularly important in this build because our main threats are at 3 and 4 mana, and in a lot of matchups, you really need to start applying pressure straight away. The weakness of running discard spells is that you need to be applying pressure alongside it. Otherwise, you're giving the opponent time to top deck into a card like Collected Company or Expressive Iteration or Teferi to just get them straight back into the game. So having a card that we can get down on turn 2 and start applying pressure with is really, really important. And then, like I said, it's flexible, can be used as removal as well. And we've got a single copy of Crucias, so I really like this as a one-off. This isn't a card that you're really excited to draw in multiples, but the first one you're always really happy to see. And then, escaping this gives you another really strong late-game engine that can just win the game pretty easily. And like I said, we have so many ways to pitch cards into the graveyard. Both Fable, Seasoned Pyromancer, and Crucias are all very good at filling the graveyard, so it's very easy for us to escape this pretty early. A lot of the time you're able to escape this on turn 4, which is really sick, but I don't really want to be running more than one. First of all, because there's not really room, and second of all, because there definitely are diminishing returns. You don't really want to be drawing multiples of this, and honestly, you're not really too excited to be casting this on the front side. Most of the time, you do want to be discarding this to something like a Fable or a Crucias to get more value out of it there as well. And then we've also got Shielded at the top of the curve. I think this is definitely the best generic finisher in the deck. Really, really powerful against a lot of the aggro decks. The fact that you can gain 2 life every time you draw is super sick, particularly if you can get it alongside Chapter 2 of Fable or Seasoned Pyromancer to gain a bunch of life immediately. But either way, very difficult for a lot of decks to kill. Your best card against the aggro decks, your best card against decks that are going to be drawing a lot of cards like Phoenix as well, so just a super powerful card. Don't really need to be running more than 2 because we can tutor it off the Crucias. So those are the main threats in the main deck. Then in terms of the interaction, 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Inquisition, so typically I'm not high on running the full 8 discard spells in Rakdos because, like I said earlier, they're not great top decks, particularly if the opponent is empty-handed, but because we have 4 Fable, 4 Seasoned Pyromancer, 4 Crucias that are all very, very good at fixing our hand, I feel like you can afford to run the full 8 discard spells here because we have so many ways to pitch them later in the game if they are dead draws. And then we've also got 4 Fatal Push, just most efficient interaction in the format. Really, really sick in this particular deck because we have, the blood tokens, the treasure tokens to be able to trigger the revolt, to be able to kill bigger creatures as well, which is really important. And then 4 Molten Impact. I think this is a really important card as well because it's just really powerful interaction in general, but the fact you can use this as a 2-for-1 with the excess damage is really important because, like I said with Seasoned Pyromancer, since you are largely reliant on single target removal in the main deck, you are a little bit more vulnerable to the go wide aggro decks, stuff like humans, stuff like elves, potentially goblins as well. So having this as a single removal spell that can kill 2 targets is really important at stabilizing against those sorts of decks as well. So those are the main cards in the deck. Then the mana base. Like I said, the main change I've made from regular decks is going up to 25 lands, which I think is a really important change. Fable, Seasoned Pyromancer, and Crucias are the cards that are going to snowball advantage in the game, and they're all cards that you really want to be playing on turn 3. Missing a 3rd land drop with this deck is a real nightmare, so I feel like going up to 25 lands is important. But because the extra card that we've added, Crucias, in addition to Fable and Seasoned Pyromancer, can fix our hand pretty easily, we're not really concerned about flooding out. Plus, we have a ton of utility lands in the deck. We have 2 Hive, 2 Den of the Bugbear as creature lands. These are particularly important because Like I said, the way this deck plays out, you're trying to strip your opponent of their resources, you're trying to get the game down to a low resource stalemate, and having access to creature lands like Hive and Den allow you to apply pressure in those sorts of situations. Hive is really nice as extra graveyard hate, and then Den produces extra tokens, so it gives you more board presence. Then we've got Takenuma and Sokenzan, which are essentially free to run as your channel lands, and then a single copy of Castle Lochthwain as well is really, really nice. Again, in those low, like I said, we're trying to get down to these low resource stalemates, and Castle Lochthwain just allows you to pull ahead in those situations. Very, very nice against decks like Control as well. And then rest of the mana base pretty simple, just the good red-black dual lands. I didn't want to go too heavy on the pain lands because outside of Shieldred we don't have a ton of ways to gain life, but with the rest of the dual lands you have pretty good mana fixing anyway. And then we've got a few basics so you don't get blown out by Assassin's Trophy and Field of Ruin. And that's the main deck. I think it's really nice. One of the big advantages of Rakdos Midrange in general is that since you're a low synergy midrange deck, you can really pivot post-sideboard depending on what you're up against. So the sideboard in this deck is very, very important. So start by having a look at that. We've got 2 copies of Cut Down. So I did want additional single target removal, particularly for matchups like Is It Wizards. And I've gone for Cut Down here. I'm not 100% sure this is the exact right choice. I have gone through a few different options for this. I've tried Power Word Kill, I've tried Go for the Throat, but I felt like having 1 mana interaction was particularly important, especially because I felt like Mono Green Devotion, whilst not a very popular deck from my experience, is a tough matchup for Rakdos Midrange because you can, kill their early elves, you can, Thoughtseize away their Karn, but if they top deck well, you really struggle to come back from behind against that deck. If they manage to get down like a Wolfwillow Haven, which you struggle to interact with, and then like Old Growth Troll, or, they top deck a Karn or something, you're in real trouble at that point. So I feel like maximising your chances of being able to kill a Llanowar Elves or an Elvish Mystic on turn 1 is really important. Plus, against the decks where you want early interaction, Cut Down kills the vast majority of things. Oh, another card that I felt was really, really important to be able to kill early on is Esper Sentinel and Thalia. Esper Sentinel is probably the best turn 1 play against you in general because your deck is trying to trade 1 for 1, and so delaying your early interaction by having Esper Sentinel or forcing them to draw a card really plays against exactly what your deck is trying to do. So Cut Down basically just maximizes your chances of killing the Esper Sentinel without giving the opponent a card, which I think is really important. If decks that are running bigger creatures, stuff like Angels, becomes more popular, then I could consider something like Go for the Throat instead, but then you can't kill artifact creatures against, the Retrofitter Foundry decks, so I think Cut Down's the best choice for single target removal in the sideboard from my experience. And we've got two more discard spells. We've got 2 Duress, predominantly here for the control matchup, but any non-creature combo deck this is going to be great there as well. Then I'll come back to the Silver Bullets in a second. We've got 2 copies of Rahilda, so this is here first of all for control, because I felt like, like I said, this deck is trying to interact with the opponent in the early game and then apply pressure, and I felt like against control, particularly on the draw, because of Archmage's Charm, you really can't rely on your 3-drops getting you there, because even if you have a discard spell early on, if the opponent top decks an Archmage's Charm or something and counters your Fable, Seasoned Pyromancer or Crucias, you're in a really rough spot. So I really wanted something else to play on turn 2, so we're not waiting until turn 3 to start applying pressure. And Rahilda's super powerful against control because most of the time they're not going to be casting stuff in the early game during their turn, which means that it's going to go to night. Then it's a 2/2 double strike that's going to be getting stuff off their deck. So really, really sick card to apply pressure against control. And then additionally, it's really good in the mirror match as well, because against other Rakdos midrange decks, most of their early game threats have 2 toughness, stuff like the 2/2 token from Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, stuff like Bloodtithe Harvester, so it's very difficult for the opponent to block this, and if you can start connecting in the mirror match, that's super sick, because that's a very grindy attrition-based matchup, and getting cards out of the opponent's deck is a really good way to pull ahead. Additionally, in the mirror match, you don't really want to be keeping your discard spells in, because a lot of the time, the mirror match comes down to who draws better. If both players are playing really well, a lot of the time it comes down to who draws better, and drawing discard spells later in the game is really bad, so I wanted to have enough cards in the mirror match to bring in so that we didn't have a ton of discard spells in the deck post sideboard for that matchup. Then we've got 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse's Graveyard Hate, mainly going to be here for stuff like Phoenix, Kethis combo, anything that's interacting with the graveyard. Bring it in the mirror match as well as a way to shut off the opponent's Seasoned Pyromancer and Crucias, and as an additional threat that we can, crew up later in the game to attack the opponent or their Planeswalkers. We've got 2 copies of Liliana of the Veil, so predominantly here for control. Again, I didn't want to run too many 3-mana threats because, we've already got Fable, Seasoned Pyromancer and Crucias, but I feel like Liliana is particularly good against control because it dodges basically all of their sweepers. It's really hard for them to beat because they want to hold on to their cards every turn, so unlike us that can play to the board or immediately activate our cards, the opponent is always going to get hit by the +1 on this, and then we can always use the minus to kill, Wandering Emperor tokens, Shark Typhoon tokens as well. And then additionally, we can use this as an additional way if we're playing against a deck that is going tall rather than wide with slightly bigger creatures. We can bring this in as an additional piece of removal as well. Main reason I really don't like this in the main deck, or in general, I don't really like Planeswalkers in the main deck of Rakdos Midrange, because there are a lot of aggressive decks in the format, and it's very difficult to protect Planeswalkers in those matchups. But Liliana really shines in the slower matchup, stuff like Control, stuff like decks that, like Angels, for example, that aren't going super wide but tend to go a bit bigger. So Liliana of the Veil is just good against Control, good against the slower decks, and good against decks that are going tall rather than wide. Then we've got 2 copies of Brotherhood's End, so this is both good against the very go wide aggro decks and the artifact decks as well. So like I said earlier, the decks that go wide very quickly are a bit of an issue because we are reliant on our single target removals. So Brotherhood's End as a sweeper against a deck like Elves and Merfolk and Humans is really sick. And then obviously, the ability to destroy all artifacts of mana value 3 or less is really, really powerful against decks like Affinity and the Thopter deck as well. Absolute all-star in those matchups. And then the last 3 cards in the sideboard are kind of our silver bullets. So whenever we bring these cards in, we board out of the Shieldred, and then anytime we use Crucias to discard a 3-drop and choose Ambitious, we're guaranteed to find these. So first of all, Knight of Souls Betrayal. This might look like a weird card, but this is here predominantly for the Goblins matchup. I think Rakdos Goblins is probably the most difficult matchup for Rakdos Midrange, purely because, well, first of all of their cards are 2-for-1s, basically, Runveld Hordemaster, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, a ton of their cards just 2-for-1 you immediately. They're very hard to interact with. Plus, they have Muxus as well, so even if you do completely strip the opponent of all their stuff, which is hard to do because so many of their cards 2-for-1 you, they can always just draw Muxus off the top and just completely win the game at that point anyway. So I don't feel like any type of single-use interaction is good enough against Goblins because so many of their stuff 2-for-1s you, and they can always draw Muxus as well. The reason I like Knight of Souls Betrayal is because it's a permanent hate piece against them, and it kills so many of their key cards. It immediately kills Prospector, it immediately kills Runveld Hordemaster, so they don't get the buff. The weakness of this card against Goblins is if they do manage to stick a Lord effect, it kind of nullifies the effect of this, but the main Lord effect that is run is Hordemaster, which immediately dies to this. Most of the Rakdos builds are running Slingang Lieutenant, which is a really powerful card against you. This immediately kills the Slingang Lieutenant and the tokens that it makes as well. It immediately kills Munitions Expert, so it means that them flashing in Munitions Expert is it's very hard for them to actually kill anything with it because they're not going to have many Goblins in play. So this is really good because not only does it kill a lot of their stuff, but it also makes Muxus a lot less threatening because unless they happen to hit 2 Runveld Hordemasters, this is just going to immediately kill a ton of the Goblins that they put into play off Muxus. Now the other Goblins build that isn't that common is the Krenko build, and this is also really good there as well because the main card that you're worried about in that build is Krenko because it can just produce a ton of tokens, but as long as we can keep their other Lord effects off the battlefield, this will just immediately kill all of the Krenko tokens that they make as well. And with the amount of single target removal that we have, if they do have stuff like Golden Chieftain, it's pretty easy for us to just use our single target removal to kill the Chieftain, and then their Krenko tokens just immediately die as well. So Knight of Souls Betrayal really goes a long way to fix what I consider to be the toughest matchup for this deck. And additionally, it also has really good applications in other matchups as well. This also happens to be really good against a deck like Helio because it just kills all their life gain enablers immediately. You could potentially bring this in against a deck like Elves as well. If you can kill their Archdruid, it just immediately kills all their 1 toughness elves as well. Mainly here for Goblins, but does have applications in other matchups. Then we've got a single copy of Shatterstorm. So obviously this is here as an artifact hate piece. We do have Brotherhood's End. Shatterstorm isn't normally run anymore, but the reason that we're running Shatterstorm is because Brotherhood's End is 3 mana, Shatterstorm is 4 mana, so we can tutor it up off the Crucias. And having Shatterstorm as a tutorable card off Crucias is really, really important against Affinity because I feel like that matchup often just comes down to, do you draw your artifact hate card before they just go over the top? Because again, Affinity is another deck that is very hard to hate out because so many of their cards 2-for-1 Ingenious Smith, Thought Monitor, Khan, for example. And so having Shatterstorm as a tutorable card really improves your chances of winning that matchup. And then finally we've got 1 Chandra Awakened Inferno. So this is predominantly here for the control matchup. I don't really feel like Shieldred is that obviously it's a powerful card if you can get it to stick against control, but they're going to have a ton of removal. They're going to have March of Otherworldly Light, Fateful Absence, Wandering Emperor. So I don't really feel like Shieldred is as reliable in that matchup. And I feel like Chandra is a really nice card to tutor up off the Crucias because if we can play Crucias on turn 3, discard a 3-drop, choose Ambitious, not only do we get the Chandra, but we also get a treasure token. So we're already already at 4 mana, so if the Crucias lives another turn, we get another treasure. Even if it doesn't, all we need from that point is to get 2 more land drops, and then we can cast this. And since it can't be countered, you know, the opponent's really going to struggle to deal with it unless they have like an Aether Gust. And once this sticks in play, it's usually just going to completely win you the game on its own. So I really like this kind of silver bullet package, which is something, like I said, Rakdos Midrange has never had access to before, and particularly having access to Knight of Soul's Betrayal to help a lot against the Goblins matchup, which I consider to be the toughest matchup for this deck, really helps improve the overall quality of the deck, I think. So anyway, that's the deck. If you've got any questions about it at all, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of the deck overall. Next up, I've just got some gameplay. I've got 5 matches that I was playing with this deck. In terms of the gameplay, the first 4 matches that you're going to see are all using a slightly older sideboard. So if you didn't see, Goblin Trapfinder got nerfed. I was going to make a video on it, but I didn't really feel like there was really enough to talk about. I think the change is good. I'm happy to see the Trapfinder deck gone because it was kind of miserable to play with and against. But the old sideboard of this deck was running stuff like Roiling Vortex, and Slaughter Games is a tutorable card. So the first 4 matches of the deck that you're going to see are with a slightly older sideboard, but it shouldn't really make a difference in terms of the gameplay. Just because I didn't really have too much time to record matches since the Trapfinder change. But the 5th match that I'm going to show you is with this updated sideboard, and I definitely think this is the way that we should build it going forwards without Trapfinder in the meta. So anyway, that's the deck. Like I said, if you've got any questions about the deck at all, let me know in the comments, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Okay, sweet. Here we go. Okay, so we're going first here. And yeah, this hand looks great. You know, we got 2 discard spells and Fatal Pushes early interaction, and then Crucias to fix our hand from there. So definitely lead on the Inquisition here, see what the opponent's up to. Oh wow, okay, so they're on Goblins, which is kind of a rough matchup game 1, but the fact they've kept a hand with nothing before turn 4 is obviously a good sign for us. So I'm going to play the Den here. I don't think it's worth going for Inquisition because, you know, they would have had to draw a card that turn. I think we're better off either waiting until they have more stuff in hand, or we can just use it to pitch to Crucias. Oh, okay, Shieldred is a nice draw here. So I'm going to play the Crucias, and I think I'm going to pitch the Inquisition here, because we really want to guarantee the 4th land to be able to play the Shieldred. Okay, we hit another Crucias, so that's not the best hit, but still, if they kill the Crucias, we have a backup in hand. Even if they don't, we can either pitch it to go pick Lesser and try and dig for a removal spell to kill Krenko before it starts multiplying, or we can just go for another Shieldred if we wanted to as well. So we'll attack him with Crucias here, and then just going to slam the Shieldred, and then I think I'm just going to pitch the land and go. Oh, we could pitch the Crucias and go Lesser. I think we kind of want to keep hitting lands, so okay, yeah, that is the downside of going Lesser. You can potentially hit lands, but next time we can just pitch the Blood Crypt to get something greater. Okay, they do play the Krenko, so that's a little bit annoying because they are going to get some tokens. I mean, thankfully we do get. Okay, we're definitely going to take this thing going, but yeah, thankfully we do get a draw step and a look from Crucias to try and find a removal spell. So I think we just want to apply maximum pressure here. You know, opponent is kind of light on resources, so I'm going to fire up the Den, see if they block. I mean, I assume they shouldn't because Krenko can save them the game here, but we put them down to 4, so even if we don't find a removal spell here, they're dead in 2 draw steps anyway. Oh wow, so okay. There we go. So Crucias found us a Molten Impact, which is perfect. So now they need to either kill the Shieldred or win this turn, basically, because Goblins doesn't have any way to gain life. So they're basically just dead to this Shieldred now. So, I mean, they could potentially go Prospector, make 2 Krenko tokens, and then play Muxus, but they would need to have drawn exactly Muxus off the top for that, and they would still need to hit lethal off the Muxus. So unless they have... I guess they could go Prospector, activate Krenko, and then play Munitions Expert to kill the Shieldred. But even then, you know, that's like the best case scenario for them. And we already have Molten Impacts in hand to kill the Krenko anyway, so... Okay. Oh, wait, can they kill us? No, there's no way from 16, right? Yeah. Okay, that was kind of scary. I mean, Chieftain is a very good card for them in this spot, but thankfully we're at too high a life total for them to kill us. So yeah, we should just win here unless I'm missing something. You know, they can sack Goblins to animate the Den, but they would have to sacrifice 4 of them. So yeah, I think we should just be good here. So yeah, Shieldred, you know, the other great thing about Shieldred is that it's really good reach in the mid to late game as well. Even if you're in a spot where you're behind on board, Shieldred can get those final points of damage in, which is really, really important in matchups like this. Okay, sick. Yeah, we got there. So, against Goblins, this is definitely the matchup for Knight of Soul's Betrayal. This is the main reason we've got it here. Definitely want Brotherhood's End as well. And I think we want Go for the Throat as additional removal. And then, typically against creature-based decks, we don't want Thoughtseize. We'd rather keep an Inquisition. But because of specifically Muxus, and, you know, obviously last game we saw there with Krenko and Slingang Lieutenant, but mainly Muxus, we want Thoughtseize here to be able to get rid of Muxus. You know, cut Inquisition and just bring an extra removal. Okay. I think we can keep this. It's a bit awkward that we have the Haunted Ridge here. We would love to draw another untapped land if possible. Definitely going to Thoughtseize on turn 1. Okay, perfect. We drew another untapped land, so we can go harvest the next turn. But we want to Thoughtseize on 1 because we definitely want to be able to get rid of Snoop if they have it. Okay, sick. Yeah. So since we didn't have spot removal, it's very important to be able to kill Snoop there because that's a card that can just snowball the advantage in the opponent's favour. You know, we trade 1 for 1, so if the opponent's able to play off the top of their library with Snoop, that's really difficult for us to beat. So they attack him with the Prospector. I mean, Matron is kind of a concern, especially alongside Prospector, because they can obviously go Matron, Shooter for Muxus, and then threaten Muxus on turn 4 if we don't find a way to kill the Prospector. Thankfully, we have the Harvester here, which can kill the Prospector. So if they do just go... Oh, okay. I was going to say, if they do just go Matron, we can kill the Prospector with the Harvester. Thankfully, this delays Muxus by a turn, because they have to take the turn off to cast Munitions Expert, which does buy us some time. Oh, okay, sick. We found a removal spell. So here, I think I'm just going to get Crucias down. Typically, you know, it can be difficult to know which to go for. But here, since we have Crucias plus a 3-drop, we can just immediately tutor for Knight of Soul's Betrayal, which is really good against them in general, but is also going to be really good against their board state if they just play Matron here. You know, Knight of Soul's Betrayal will just act as a one-sided sweeper that also, you know, for the rest of their game, immediately kills Prospector, immediately kills Munitions Expert, immediately kills Matron, immediately kills Slingang Lieutenant and its tokens. So even though they've got Muxus here, I think they're really going to struggle to beat Knight of Soul's Betrayal because they would need to hit exactly Muxus into 2 Lords to not just get hosed by Knight of Soul's Betrayal here. And it doesn't really affect us that much, you know. Obviously it slows down our clock slightly, but the only 1/1s that we run in the deck are the tokens that you get off Season Pyromancer, so... And then another great interaction we got going on here is Crucias plus Croxer is really nice as well. You know, it's a way for us to pitch Croxer and get value off it and to just fill our graveyard every single turn as well. Okay, so opponent just fires up Den. I'm definitely going to kill that because Muxus into 2 Lords I feel is the only way we're going to lose. Now we have Knight of Soul's Betrayal, so go for the throating one of their lands to keep them even further away from Muxus seems really powerful. You know, now they're only on 4 lands, they're still 2 turns away from Muxus, so... And even then, you know, with Knight of Soul's Betrayal, I don't feel like Muxus is that great of an out anymore. So I do kind of, like... I would like to keep hold of Pyromancer to refuel, but... I also kind of want to get Croxer out as just a way to close the game out. So how many... Okay, yeah, we've got 5 cards in the graveyard, so we definitely want to pitch the Pyromancer just to get that 6th card into the graveyard so we can escape Croxer next turn. And yeah, so many of the opponent's draws are dead now because of Knight of Soul's Betrayal. Goblins doesn't have any way to kill enchantments either, so we should just be good here, I think. So, going to Thoughtseize here, see what the opponent's got going on. Okay, yeah, we'll just take the Muxus. Slingang Lieutenant literally just dies immediately. They can't even activate it here, so... And then we can just escape the Croxer. I assume they just pitched the Slingang Lieutenant here. But yeah, this just highlights how sick Knight of Soul's Betrayal is against Goblins. Which is, you know, this would otherwise be a really tough matchup. If they could play the Slingang Lieutenant, if they still had the Prospectors and stuff live, then it's a lot more difficult. So I don't think we want to discard anything off Crucias. We want Fatal Push here to be able to kill any creatures that they do manage to stick. Like Snoop could potentially be an issue. And then we want to keep the Pyromancer here as a way to refuel if we do go, you know, Hellbent at any point. But I think we should just be good to win the game here. Crox is going to start closing the game out really quickly. Yeah, they just have a land, so... They could potentially rip Muxus into 2 Lord effects, but I think that's so unlikely. Going to pitch the Molten Impact here and just go Greater, see what we hit. I think their only out here is just Muxus into 2 Lord effects. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there, nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, this looks good. You know, early interaction into Bloodtithe Harvest is nice. Definitely going to play the Swamp untapped here in case the opponent plays something on turn 1 that we want to be able to push. Obviously, this hand is a bit risky because if we are against control, the only active card we've got is Bloodtithe Harvester, but... Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, against the Llanowar Elves deck, Fatal Push on turn 1 is perfect. Now we can just play Bloodtithe Harvester on 2, and we've got Crucias as well here, which is nice. You know, gives us a good discard target if we do need to loot the blood token here. So, opponent... Okay, I was going to say they could be on Elves or Devotion. Now it's pretty obvious that they're on Devotion. We could loot away the Crucia here, but I feel like against Devotion where, you know, they actively want a high density of cards in hand because they're either going to have to pitch a land or a payoff, and if they pitch a land, they could be in a situation where they don't have enough lands to be able to cast what they need, especially if they're reliant on mana dorks to get them there when we have this Fatal Push. Okay, there's Nixlos. That's kind of scary. Thankfully, they don't have... Oh, okay. I was going to say, thankfully, they don't have enough mana for Khan yet, but Old Growth Troll is a concern. Now, thankfully, we can cycle the Blood Token and Fatal Push it, but with a Nixlos in play, this is, you know, not great. We would love to have exiled the Old Growth Troll, because now they're just going to be able to put the Old Growth Troll onto their land, and they get to keep all 3 devotions, so they're going to have access to a lot of mana next turn. I mean, having said that, Seasoned Pyromancer is a good draw here, but I'm kind of worried now because they could very well go Storm the Festival, they could very well go Khan, they could very well go Cure it into a creature, all of which are very scary for us, so... Okay, so that's 4 mana, and they still have another land that can produce 4. Okay, yeah, again, Cavalier of Thorns, not great, so we're in a rough spot here. This matchup is quite polarizing. Oh, wow, and they hit a Nixlos off the Cavalier, so they have access to 7 mana here still. So if they have, like, a Storm the Festival or a Khan, it's going to be really difficult to come back. Yeah, this matchup... Oh, they do have Khan, yeah. This is going to be hard to win then. But yeah, this matchup is pretty polarizing where if your early interaction lines up well and the opponent doesn't draw that well, then you can win fairly easily. But if the opponent manages to get off, you know, get off one of their powerful cards, whether that's a Khan or a Storm the Festival or a Cavalier of Thorns, either off the top or because your early interaction doesn't line up well, it's really hard to recover from behind. Okay, so they just go for Tormod's Crypt. I don't mind that too much because we're not that close to escaping the Crucia. I would honestly be more scared of them grabbing like an expensive spell for next turn, something like a Portal to Phyrexia or, I don't know, like a Cityscape Leveler or something like that. I mean, either way, I think it's going to be, you know, the opponent can probably grab something like that next turn. Okay, yeah, this is rough. So I don't think we're going to be winning this one, but we'll play it out anyway, you know. There's always a chance. But yeah, I imagine they just minus the Khan here and grab, you know, a Portal to Phyrexia or a Cityscape Leveler, and that's going to be almost impossible for us to beat. Let's see what they get here. Yeah, okay, Portal to Phyrexia. So I very much doubt we're going to be able to beat that. We don't have any artifact removal in the main, so... Yeah, okay. I'm not even going to see my draw step. There's no way we can beat that. So this matchup, we definitely want discard and early removal for their creatures. So I also think we want Liliana here as well because they do want a high density of stuff in their hand. And Liliana, you know, can kill their bigger creatures that our other removal might struggle to deal with, like the Cavalier of Thorns that we saw last game. Inquisition isn't great here because all the stuff we want to hit with discard spells, apart from on exactly turn 1 where we can hit Llanowar Elves, is more expensive stuff. Maybe we keep in 1 Inquisition. I mean, we could bring in Go for the Throat, but honestly, if the opponent lands, you know, we can still kill Old Growth Troll with Fatal Push and Molten Impact. Go for the Throat is only really going to be good against Cavalier of Thorns exactly, and even then, if the opponent has a Cavalier of Thorns in play, that's not a great spot for us to be. Okay, got to mull that because it's a 1-lander, unfortunately. This is definitely going to be a keep. I'm not sure exactly what we want to put back here. Probably the Bloodtithe Harvester, although... Yeah, I think Bloodtithe Harvester, and then we can have Shieldred as like a way to close the game out. Because the really nice thing about Shieldred in this matchup is that even if the opponent does get down something like a Cavalier of Thorns or Khan, we can still just burn the last few points of damage out with Shieldred, even if we're super far behind on board. Oh, wow. Okay, so opponents kept a very risky hand. You kind of, like, the issue with the Devotion deck is it's very polarizing, where they kind of have to keep hands like this. So we get to Thoughtseize the Willful Haven. Now we can push the Mystic, and now they're really in trouble. Yeah, okay, they just scoop it up straight away. So hoping for a repeat of that in Game 3 if we can. I don't think there's much that changes on play versus draw. I could see an argument for maybe cutting the Inquisition for one go for the throat here, because Inquisition when you're on the draw is a lot worse. The only card you're really interested in taking outside of maybe Old Growth Troll is a Llanowar Elves or Elvish Mystic, and obviously on the draw that's too slow. Oh wow. I don't think you can ever really afford to keep a one-lander with this deck. This I think we can keep though. And I think I'm going to put back the Shielded, because we definitely want to keep both Thoughtseizes and all 3 lands, and then we can refuel with the Seasoned Pyromancer. So no turn 1 Elf is great to see here. That's really solid. And then we can Thoughtseize. Okay, definitely taking the Wolfwillow Haven here. Okay, we're very happy to see them play the Nykthos as well, because that shuts them off playing Old Growth Troll on turn 3, which is really huge. I'm going to play the Bloodtithe Harvester here because, you know, we could go Thoughtseize and push, but I want to start applying pressure here. And we don't have to worry about Old Growth Troll this turn because they don't have the mana to cast it because of Nykthos, so... Wow, okay, another Thoughtseize is sick here. So definitely take the Old Growth Troll, and then we can... What do I want to do here? I think I'm going to Thoughtseize away the Cavalier of Thorns as well. And now the opponent is basically just left at the mercy at the top of their deck. You know, even if they draw an Old Growth Troll, they can't cast it. If they can't draw like Khan or Storm the Festival, they can't cast it. So, Lovestruck Beast is a bit of a concern here, though. But I mean, we already have Fatal Push and Harvester to be able to deal with it. So, so we definitely want to push and Pyromancer this turn. We can push the 1/1 to stop the Lovestruck Beast attacking. That enables us to start attacking with the Harvester, which I think is kind of important. Although, actually, hold on. I played that too quickly. That was stupid. So I was thinking we want to start attacking with the Harvester, but what I should have done there is just use the Harvester to kill the 1/1 and then Fatal Push the Lovestruck Beast, I think. I mean, I think we're still fine here because we've drawn the second Bloodtithe Harvester, but this opens them, you know, opens us being vulnerable to them drawing like a Llanowar Elves off the top and enabling the Lovestruck Beast to attack. So yeah, last time was a misplay on my part. I just played too quickly. I definitely should have used the Bloodtithe Harvester to kill the 1/1 and then Fatal Push the Lovestruck Beast. I mean, thankfully we drew a second Harvester, so I think it's going to work out here anyway. You know, we can just use this Harvester to kill the Lovestruck Beast now, but we ended up losing the Seasoned Pyromancer because of that mistake, so that was my bad. I just played a bit too quickly there. Can definitely get Crucias down here, though, and looks like opponent's still struggling on lands, which is great for us. I assume they would just slam a land if they drew it off the top. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there. So those matchups are pretty polarizing, but sometimes they're going to play out like that. Okay, sweet. So we're on the play here. And I can't keep a hand with nothing before turn 3. This looks more reasonable, though. You know, we got Bloodtithe Harvester or Molten Impact on turn 2 into Shieldred. So, yeah, definitely happy with this. So against Gigantha here, not 100% sure what that is. Could potentially be Trapfinder, maybe. Okay, or I was going to say all Wizards. Mishra's Research Desk is interesting. So they could be on Sacrifice, maybe. Or I guess Research Desk is pretty reasonable in Trapfinder as well. So we'll see what else they got going on here. Okay, they just cracked the Research Desk straight away. So that means they're looking for lands. Okay, Diabolic Intenser, definitely against Trapfinder here. So we'll see what they take here. I mean, the fact they immediately crack the Research Desk makes me maybe think they're looking for lands. Yeah, okay. Or they could potentially just have a load of Sacrifice synergy stuff without anything to sacrifice. You know, that's one of the main reasons I was interested in going into green and moving away from the Sacrifice synergy stuff, because it can lead to kind of awkward hands sometimes. Okay, so they play the land and just pass back. Okay, so we'll attack with the Harvester here, see if they've got a removal spell. And then we don't have anything great to do this turn, really. We could cycle the Blood Token to try and find a discard spell. Okay, they do push the Harvester, so... I think it's worth cracking the blood token here because there's nothing that we really need to trigger Revolt to kill. Okay, we hit Crucias, which is nice, but not necessary with Shieldred. I think we're more interested in getting Shieldred down, but we'll see what the opponent does here. Oh, wow, they're playing looting. Interesting. So I was going to set a stop during the opponent's turn just to bluff something, but there's nothing that we really run that would give us priority here anyway, so I don't think it's worth doing yet. If they do play a creature, though, I'm going to quickly go, like, set a stop so that it bluffs Fatal Push. Okay, we drew Inquisition. So now we've drawn Inquisition. I think I'm more interested in going Inquisition into Crucias. Okay, yeah. So I think we'll take Diabolic Intent here. Just because it's very risky to leave them with that and then risk them drawing Trapfinder. You know, obviously Kolaghan's Command is strong as well because that can rebuy Trapfinder and Traveller from the graveyard, but I think the risk of leaving them with intent is too high if they happen to draw a Trapfinder, so... And Molten Impact isn't really great against them. You know, the only thing it's really going to hit... I mean, we'll see what else they're playing. They could be playing Flesh Gorge, or they could be playing Karn. Molten Impact is reasonable against both of those, but not very good against the rest of the deck. You know, we obviously wouldn't want to use it against Trapfinder. I guess we could use it against Fable of the Mirror Breaker as well, but in general, Shielded is going to be much more useful. Okay, they do have the Ashnod's Altar, which is scary. Well, they have it for next turn. And they can now use Fatal Push on the Crucias. So this is kind of sketchy, because if they ever draw the Trapfinder, they can just go off. Which is why we would love to draw Fatal Push, which is why I'm kind of happy we've got Seasoned Pyromancer here, because it gives us 2 more looks at Fatal Push. But either way, if they don't find an answer for the Shieldred, or they don't find the Trapfinder soon, I think we're in a pretty good spot. And like I said, you know, Pyromancer gives us a few looks at finding the Fatal Push, which is the most important card now, because that, you know, I think the only way we're going to lose this now, I feel, is if the opponent has a Trapfinder. And Fatal Push just stops them comboing off, because we can use it to kill the 0-mana Traveller. Okay, another Shieldred. I mean, it's not bad to have a backup, but I think we just want to get Seasoned Pyromancer here just to try and dig for the Fatal Push, to try and, you know, shut off the only out that the opponent really has here. Oh, perfect. Okay, that's sick. So now we have Fatal Push and Thoughtseize, so we can Thoughtseize away. Well, we'll see what else they have, but getting rid of Kolaghan's Command is very nice. Yeah, sweet. So we get rid of Kolaghan's Command, and now we have the push to shut off the combo, so I think we're in a pretty good spot here. I mean, the opponent could always, you know, Research Desk into Trapfinder and then draw a discard spell off the top, but chances of that are very low, and, you know, we're going to be able to close the game out very quickly here. Faithless Looting is very difficult for them to go for with Shieldred in play. Oh, did they hit a Trapfinder? Okay, there's the Trapfinder. That's kind of annoying, but I mean, thankfully we have the Fatal Push now. Okay, they Trapfinder. I mean, the other annoying thing here is they do get a lot of mana off the Ashnod's Altar, so even if we do push the Traveller here, they could use that mana on something like the Research Desk. Okay, so they Trapfinder again. I mean, they could just always brick if they hit 4 Trapfinders in a row, but chances of that are very unlikely. Okay, they hit the Traveller, so I'm going to wait for them to draft a card off the spellbook first, just so it doesn't inform their decision. Okay, Shipwreck Sifters, so we'll push the Traveller in response. Shipwreck Sifters is a bit annoying. I mean, it does deal them 2 damage off Shieldred, but it gives them another look for another Trapfinder, which is kind of scary. So now they have 4 mana floating, 7 mana in total, so the draw of the Shipwreck Sifters plus the Research Desk is kind of scary. They could potentially find another Trapfinder here. So even though we did draw basically perfect off the Pyromancer, I mean, perfect would have been 2 Fatal Pushes, but still not out of the woods yet here. And they do have a blocker in play now as well, which can, you know, is obviously preventing 4 damage from the Shieldred. So, yeah, okay. So they go for the Research Desk. So as long as they don't find Diabolic Intent or Trapfinder, I think we should be fine here, hopefully. I mean, what? So they block the Shieldred. They take... Wait, what did they hit there? Okay, just lands. That's good to see, obviously. So yeah, if they block with Shieldred, they're going down to 8 off the next draw step. We deal 3 off the Hive. So that's what, only 6 damage. So they do unfortunately get another draw step as well. Okay, they just put Gigantha into hand. So that's obviously a good sign. And because of Shieldred, looting also isn't really great. Oh, wow. Okay, perfect. There we go. The backup Fatal Push. You'd love to see it. Right, so now we can animate the Hive, and we can still hold the treasure token up for Fatal Push as well. And then we can attack in. I mean, I'm kind of tempted to take... If they didn't have Traveller and Trapfinder in the graveyard, I would definitely take one of them because, you know, if they have Coligans come on or whatever, taking the 0-mana Traveller doesn't really do much if they can just grab a Trapfinder instead. It's essentially the same thing from their point of view, right? So they have to win this turn, basically, or kill Shieldred. Okay, there's the research desk. But yeah, if they just had, for example, the 0-mana Traveller, or they just had the Trapfinder, then it would definitely be right to Hive one of them. But since they don't, I don't think we have to, really. Okay, so I did hit claim the first one. That can steal the Seasoned Pyromancer, give them, so that nets them a mana, and gets rid of the Pyromancer. Thankfully that doesn't kill the Shieldred though, which is the key thing here. So they go for the research desk. Okay, they do have Fatal Push, so that does kill the Shieldred. But we still have the Hive, we still have the 1/1 token. I mean, if they have double push, they can survive here. Yeah, okay, sweet. So, against Trapfinder, this is the matchup where we've got Roiling Vortex 4, and then we also want Slaughter Games as well. You know, this is also the matchup where we want the Slaughter Games. And I think we also want Go for the Throat as just an extra instant speed piece of interaction that can break up the combo. Molten Impact's not very good in this matchup, and then I think we can also board in a Duress here. You know, hitting, you know, something like a Ashnod's Altar or a Diabolic Intent is pretty nice, so I think we can just run it back like that. We didn't really get to see what else they were running in addition to the combo, though. We didn't see if they were on Khan. We didn't see if they were on Flesh Gorger. I mean, they're not on Jund, so I think, you know, Vortex should be really good in this matchup. I assume they board in Feed the Swarm, but that's going to be a tutor target, so they need Diabolic Intent to find that. Okay, I mean, I think we keep this, especially on the draw, you know, 25, this is exactly the reason why we're running 25 lands, because we can keep 2 landers pretty confidently that we're going to find the 3rd land on curve. So I'm going to lead on the Inquisition here. Okay, a lot of good cards. I mean, I'm kind of inclined to take the Fable because that's the most generically powerful card here, and it gives them a creature to sacrifice to the Diabolic Intent. And, you know, we've got 2 discard spells in hand anyway, so we could just go, you know, Inquisition into Thoughtseize, take, go blank, and Diabolic Intent. Just leaves them with the Fatal Push. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. I know they don't have a sack outlet for the Claim the First one either. You know, they don't have the Diabolic Intent anymore, or they don't have Phyrexian Tower either, so... Okay, they just put Gigantha into hand, which is good to see. And then I think we're just going to go for Crucias, pitching Fable to get Slaughter Games here. And then we can just get rid of the Trapfinder from the deck and not have to worry about that anymore. Because that is, you know, obviously from the Rakdos side, that is the main concern. So just got to hope they don't have a Thoughtseize for the Slaughter Games here. Okay, they're just hardcasting Traveller, sure. Pretty happy to see that. Okay, they have Pit Fighter. I mean, but that's pretty good for us as well because it gets rid of the Traveller from their hand. And unlike... Oh, wow, they can push the Crucias here. Okay, that's a bit rough. But unlike a lot of the other 3-mana extraction effects, they don't get any benefit if the thing's in their hand. So we're just sorting games. And we get to look at their deck as well. So we get to see what else they're running. So get rid of that. Get rid of the Travelers. And then let's have a scroll through here. What else are they running? So they got the Feed the Swarm. Oh, wow. They're not even running Karn or Flesh Gorger. This is a very all-in on the combo. And now we've got Thoughtseize for Gigantha as well. So now basically their only way to win the game is this Falconwrath Pit Fighter, or I guess they can like rebuy Gigantha with Kolaghan's Command, or we saw, what was that card called? They have another rebuy effect basically, the one that I used to play in my old Rakdos build. Wow, they're cracking the Pit Fighter. I mean, that's kind of risky because that's one of their only win conditions, right? I feel like the only way they can win now is rebuying Gigantha from the graveyard. Okay, so they crack the research desk, hit Feed the Swarm and Intent. Okay, I guess they go for Intent because that... Oh, well, I was gonna say that kind of punishes us for committing to the board. I was just going to pass the next turn, but now we can get rid of the Claim the Firstborn. We can just get Fable into play here. And now, unless they draw another Claim the Firstborn, this Diabolic Intent is just going to go to waste. So they crack the research desk. Ha, okay, there's the Kolaghan's Command. So that does enable them to rebuy the Gigantha and potentially kill the 2/2 here as well. If they have a land, they can go kill the 2/2, rebuy Gigantha. So definitely not out of the woods yet, but I still feel like, you know, they're on thin ice here. If we can find a way to kill Gigantha, then they have to dig for another Kolaghan's Command or another way to get Gigantha back from the graveyard. So I guess the opponent's considering whether to kill the 2/2 or deny us our draw step here. Okay, sick. Crocs is the perfect draw here. We can just play the Croxer, make them discard the Gigantha again, and then we can escape it next turn. So yeah, that was a sick top deck. I mean, either way, I still feel we're in good spot. You know, I mean, we are down to 10, so it is a 2-turn clock from Gigantha, but we have a lot of ways to get out of it. Okay, sick. We got there. Nice. Okay, so we're getting second here. And yeah, this hand looks good. You know, got a lot of interaction, which is always good against Lurrus decks because they tend to typically be low to the ground. Okay, so Battlefield Forge, I imagine we're against the Thopters deck here. Going to lead on Thoughtseize and see what they got. Oh, okay, it's Auras. Interesting. So definitely take the Spirit Dancer. Okay, this hand is sick against Auras. We have so much interaction. So if they play the Spirit Dancer here, that's good for us. Okay, yeah, dude just cast the Spirit Dancer, so I think we're just going to go for the Molten Impact now, while it can still kill it, because Molten Impact being sorcery speed and their creatures outgrowing 4 damage pretty quickly means that it's not going to be great later in the game. See if they drew another creature here. Okay, they just put Lurrus into hand, so we're definitely going to Thoughtseize that away before it becomes an issue. Hopefully they haven't drawn another creature. Okay, they didn't, so we just Thoughtseize away the Lurrus, and now their deck basically does nothing, you know. If they draw a creature off the top, it can be rough, but we already have the Fatal Push ready. Although I guess they have Lauren's Escape, so we basically just have to hope the opponent doesn't draw a creature. And if they don't, they're literally just going to be doing nothing for the rest of the game. So we should just start pressuring them now, get them with the Harvester, and then we can play Crucias and start fixing our hand to hopefully, you know, if we can find another Fatal Push, that would be really good. But we also kind of want to find more threats to close the game out a little bit quicker as well. So opponent's holding priority here for the Lauren's Escape, I imagine. So I think we're going to discard the Molten Impact here. I don't think that's really going to be that great. We could go lesser to try and find another Fatal Push, but when you go lesser, chances are you're going to find a land because you have, you know, 25 lands in the deck. You're much more likely to find a land, and we don't really need a land here. Although having said that, we are missing land drops, so maybe it would have been beneficial. I mean, I think since we want to just close the game out as quickly as possible, and we also want to try and find another Fatal Push to try and shut off their only out, I'm going to go for Pyromancer here, pitching both the Blood Tithe Harvesters. Now, we could have potentially gone 2 Blood-Tithe Harvesters, but I really want to hold open a treasure. Okay, I mean, we drew another land anyway, but, you know, if we go both Blood-Tithe Harvesters, then we can't hold up Fatal Push, which is an issue. And then I think we'll just play the land here and pass back. And then going to pitch the Pyromancer and going to name Greater again, because even if they do draw a creature and they Loran's Escape, we can still attack around it. Okay, yeah, they just scoop it up. And then Shieldred could have dealt the final points of damage there. So this matchup should be pretty good because we have so much early interaction, which is basically how you beat this deck. So definitely want some Go for the Throats as additional spot removal. Liliana of the Veil is a consideration as well, as just an extra way to kill one of their creatures. I think Crocs is probably just too slow here. And I do like Shieldred at the top end, but I don't think we need more than one, really. You know, we definitely want to have at least one in the deck to be able to tutor off the Crucias to deal the final few points of damage. And I'm just trying to think whether we want Liliana over some of the other 3-drops in the deck. I think we probably do, just because we want as much interaction as possible. And I think we'll probably trim on the Seasoned Pyromancer, because as you saw last game, there are often spots where you just want to hold up Fatal Push, and the issue with Seasoned Pyromancer is it forces you to discard, so you don't want to be in a spot where you can't make your proactive 3-mana play because you would lose Fatal Push otherwise, which is why I'm cutting the Fatal Push over anything else there. Okay, I mean, we don't have anything proactive, but this hand should hopefully run them out of threats. You'd hope. You know, 2 discard spells, 3 removal spells. I mean, it's not impossible for Auras to play through this if things line up perfectly for them, but it's going to be very hard for them. So we're going to lead on the Inquisition here, just to try and take one of their creatures. Okay, I think we'll take the Light Pause. I mean, maybe that was wrong. Maybe I should have taken the Core Spirit Dancer, because them getting extra auras on the Light Pause is slightly less annoying than them them drawing cards might be less of an issue than them putting more auras on the Light Pause, but if they're running Kaya's Ghost form, that could be an issue. I mean, thankfully, yeah, okay, opponent just puts Lurrus into hand, so it shouldn't end up mattering, and we drew the Shieldred as a threat here, so we can just Inquisition away the Lurrus here, and now, same situation as game 1. I might as well Thoughtseize here as well, because we're not going to get much use out of it as the game goes on. Take the Ethereal Armor, which is definitely the biggest threat. And now they basically just have to draw a creature or we win. Okay, drawing a tap land there is kind of rough, but at least we can guarantee playing Shieldred next turn now. And they don't have Loran's Escape either, so Fatal Push should be good to stabilize. Okay, another land is perfect, because now we can cast Shieldred and hold up Fatal Push as well. And Shieldred is going to start clocking them very quickly. Even if they do find a creature, if it's a Sram or Spirit Dancer, okay, yeah. They would just deal them so much damage off drawing from the Sram or Spirit Dancer anyway, but yeah, we got there. Okay, so we're going second here. And I can't keep a 1-lander even on the draw, unfortunately, so it's going to have to be a mole. And I mean, this is definitely better. A bit annoying that we've got the Haunted Ridge here as a tap land, and I think we're probably going to put back... It's between Croxer and one of the 3-drops. Probably putting back the Seasoned Pyromancer, considering we don't even have our second red source yet. I kind of like keeping the Croxer here because it's a nice thing that we can loot to the second chapter of Fable. Okay, so Thoughtseize. Yeah, I imagine they take the Fable here. So that's a little bit rough. I imagine this is the mirror match. This is post Trapfinder nerf, by the way. So definitely know it's not Trapfinder anymore, which is nice. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad that deck's gone because it just ate up sideboard slots in so many decks. Okay, so they lead on Harvester. I think we'll just play the Harvester of our own here. You know, it gives us a way to kill the 2/2 on Fable if they don't use their Harvester to kill ours. Okay, play a Den so they don't get to play any of their 3-drops, which is huge. You know, getting to play a Fable or a Seasoned Pyromancer before the opponent is a pretty big advantage, particularly Fable. Okay, so they use Harvester to kill mine, that makes sense. See if they have another threat they're trying to protect. Okay, looks like they're just passing back, which is good for us. Okay, they crack the blood token. Okay, they have a Croxer of their own, sure. Interesting. So I think I'm just going to play the Blood Crypt tapped here and pass back. We could, you know, there is a consideration to playing it untapped in case we want to go double Fatal Push. I definitely want to crack the blood token to pitch the Crucia here, but I want to wait until the opponent's turn because they could play Shieldred here, and I would want to be able to crack the blood token to get Revolt. So even though we would kind of like to keep the blood token around to trigger Revolt to kill Shieldred later in the game, I think cycling away the Crucia to try and hit our 4th land is very important to be able to cast Shieldred here. So we're going to crack the blood token here. Like I was saying earlier, we could have shocked in the Blood Crypt in case they played 2 creatures, but I think the likelihood of that happening is very low, and saving 2 life in this matchup can make a difference. So just going to slam the Shieldred here, which taxes their ability to use the Fable, you know, makes them less likely to use the Fable, which is good for us because we don't want them to fill their graveyard for Crucia. If possible, we want to, you know, slow them down filling up the graveyard so Crucia is less of an issue. And Shieldred dealing chip damage when they're already down to 14 is a pretty big incentive for them to not just loot 2 cards here. You know, they've got 3 cards in the graveyard, so 3 more and they can escape Crucia. Okay, they only pitch 1, which we're happy to see. So we'll see what else they have here. They don't have a way to trigger Revolt either, so if they have got Fatal Push in hand, they don't currently have a way to kill the Shieldred. Obviously, when Fable flips next turn, they will, though. So, okay, so they play Fable. Okay, Fable of our own is really nice to see. So we're definitely going to attack here. And I definitely think we're going to hold on to the land because we want to fill our graveyard to be able to escape our Crucia. And there's always a chance that they could fill their graveyard to escape their Crucia. And if they do, I would like to be able to discard the Blood Crypt and use the Fatal Push on their Crucia. Now this Fatal Push in hand, I either want to save for if they do escape Crucia to kill theirs, or next turn we can attack with the 2/2, create a treasure token, and then sack the treasure to trigger Revolt to kill the Reflection. Because one way we, you know, even though we're in a pretty good spot here, one way we could lose if we let the Reflection live. Okay, so they force our hands here. We have to use Fatal Push now, which means we have to use it on the 2/2. But yeah, I was saying, one way that they could win from this spot is if we don't have a way to kill Reflection, they can just keep copying Reflection with Reflection, build up a really wide board. I mean, having said that, we've got Shieldred in play, which is gaining us life, so I'm not even sure that'll be good enough. Plus, they were missing land drops. Okay, they just scoop it up. I mean, it was weird that they discarded a land, because they were missing lands, right? I mean, either way, sideboarding in this matchup, we want to bring in threats and answers and take out the discard spells if possible, because... Okay, so we'll bring in Cut Down, bring in Rahilda, bring in Hearst, bring in Liliana, and just cut the discard spells. Because the thing is, in this matchup, it's very attrition-based, it's very grindy, and it often comes down to who draws better. And discard spells, when you are in top deck mode, which I imagine this mirror match usually goes down to, are just the worst top decks later in the game. And typically, you know, because both me and the opponent are playing low synergy mid-range decks, the card quality is pretty flat overall. You know, obviously, you know, cards like Fable and if they're running like Chandra and Liliana are powerful, but they're not that much more powerful than any of the cards in the rest of the deck that we really want to thought seize in the early game. You know, if we're playing against a combo deck where we can take their key combo piece, or we're playing against Control where we can take a Teferi or something, those are decks where the card quality... Some of their cards are a lot better than others, so the discard spells are at their best. Whereas in this matchup where, like I said, the card quality is pretty flat overall, you're not really gaining that much from having discard spells in the early few turns. And like I said, the risk versus reward of drawing them later in the game, when they're often dead draws if the opponent's played their hand out already. You know, oftentimes this mirror match is going to come down to both players being empty-handed. Discard spells really aren't what you want to be having in the deck. You want to have answers for their creatures, because, you know, holding on to an instant speed creature removal is a lot better than holding on to a discard spell, because at least you can kill a creature land or a creature off the top, right? Whereas if the opponent is just constantly playing what they have, then discard spells are kind of useless there. So obviously this hand is very, very land heavy, but you really don't want to be mulliganing in the mirror match. I mean, I guess the opponent's also likely to board out their discard spells, but like I said, this matchup is very attrition based. We have so many ways to loot that we kind of want to just have a high density of cards anyway. You know, the player who starts on lower resources is generally at a disadvantage anyway. So normally I would like to, wouldn't fire off Fatal Push that quickly, but because we have Rahilda here and Bloodtithe Harvester can kill it, I really want to clear the way for Rahilda to get in if possible, because the only creatures we're really worried about with Rahilda are Bonecrusher Giant and Graveyard Trespasser. Everything else, like Bloodtithe Harvester and Fable of the Mirror Breaker, they can't really block Rahilda because it's got First Strike. So we want to try and clear the way for this to start connecting. If Rahilda can start connecting, we're just instantly getting ahead on card advantage here. Okay, so opponent plays Bloodtithe Harvester. I mean, them getting rid of Liliana is a bit annoying because that does give us an out to whatever creature they did have, but being able to connect with Rahilda here is huge. Yeah, okay, sick. So we hit Bloodtithe Harvester, so we're already ahead on cards here, and now we can go play their Harvester from their deck and then Fatal Push their Bloodtithe Harvester, because if we let them pass with it, they can just use their Harvester to kill our Rahilda. This way we're just applying maximum pressure. If they don't get blockers in play, we're going to start getting more cards out of their deck off Rahilda, which is really sick. Okay, they got Liliana, so I assume they minus it, and we're definitely going to sack the Harvester. Even though, that does mean we're kind of soft to the opponent's creatures, I think it's worth doing. Now, we could channel the Sokenzan here to enable us to connect directly with Rahilda, but I don't think that's really worth it, to be honest, because we wouldn't be able to cast what we hit off it anyway. And then I think, we could go Liliana, but I think I'm more interested in getting Fable into play here because, Liliana is... I feel like I want Fable, I want more board presence to insulate me from an opposing Liliana. And yeah, for example, the opponent has Seasoned Pyromancer here, so they cycle away 2 non-lands, so now Liliana is kind of useless at this point because we don't want them to, we would want to use the minus on it really, and it's not really effective on this board state. So I think we're going to cycle away the Liliana here, just because it's not really that useful. We don't want to fuel their Croxer in the graveyard anyway. Oh, perfect. Okay. Unlicensed Hearse is really sick here because now we can hearse away the Croxer, which is the main concern, and then we can just play Blood Crypt and the Seasoned Pyromancer as well. So that was a sick draw there. We could attack with the Rahilda, but I quite like just attacking with the 2/2 because if we attack with the Rahilda, they can just block with everything and kill it, which I don't think is worth it because Rahilda is a very strong threat. Even if we hadn't drawn the Hearse there, it kind of incentivizes them not to attack with Croxer because we can start connecting with Rahilda and potentially drawing like Fatal Push off their deck. But yeah, now we can go Hearse. We definitely want to use it now before they can escape the Croxer. And we can exile the Croxer and the Seasoned Pyromancer. And then we can just cast our own Pyromancer to refuel here. So we're definitely pretty far ahead at this point. Okay, yeah, opponent just scoops it up. Sick, we got there. So just doing a little recap at the end here. Overall, I've been really, really impressed with Crucias, not only because it's another card like Fable or Seasoned Pyromancer that really helps to fix your draws and snowball the game in terms of card advantage, but the fact it gives you access to one-ofs in the sideboard is really, really huge for this particular deck. I feel like Night of Soul's Betrayal against decks like Goblins is huge, Shatterstorm against Artifact decks is huge, Chandra against the Control decks is huge, and also, as the meta adapts, there are so many cards in the historic card pool in red, black, and colourless that cost 4 or more, that even if new decks emerge or the meta changes towards something else, there will probably be a hate card that you can tutor off the Crucias that you can run in the sideboard. And even outside of that, you could potentially even splash off-colour hate pieces because of the treasures that Crucias produces when it tutors it up as well. So I feel like the deck is very adaptable going forwards. Additionally, with the Trapfinder nerf, like you saw in the game there, I felt like my old version, the oldest sideboard, had good tools to fight that matchup. We had the Vortexes and the Slaughter games, but the nerf of Trapfinder basically just frees up more sideboard slots for the deck, which is really, really crucial in this particular deck because, in a low synergy mid-range deck, sideboard slots are very valuable. So being able to cut the Vortexes and the Slaughter games for other cards that are more generically useful is really, really useful. So, like I said, I'm very, very happy with how the deck's been performing overall. Crucias has been great, and having access to these one-ofs in the sideboard should mean that the deck has decent tools to fight, even if there are new decks that pop up that are bad matchups for it. So anyway, that's the video. If you've got any questions or suggestions about the deck, definitely let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Big up!